Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where I learn about him through everything he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I am joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, how are you today?
Hi, Jeff. I'm doing great, and I'm excited to dive back into Lewis's writings with you. Where are we picking up today?
We're picking up where we left off. Do you remember where that was?
Yes, you were nearing the end of the 1920 letters in the collected letters of C.S. Lewis. Shall we start there?
Yeah, do you remember what the last letter we read was and how it ended?
The last letter you read was to Arthur Greaves, dated December 12th, 1920. It ended with Lewis discussing his struggles with writing poetry, feeling uninspired and frustrated with his work.
Sorry, what did you say that date was again?
It was December 12th, 1920.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I think I found
Yeah,
this spot.
it's a pretty reflective letter. Did something about the date stand out to you?
No, I was just trying to find my spot. And hello to Nidalate, who is joining us here in the chat, Robot Lady.
Hello, Nidalante. Glad you could join us for Jeff's exploration of C.S. Lewis. Let's get into it.
All right. The next letter is to his father, Robot Lady. He wrote it from University College, where he's studying at Oxford. It's dated July 25th, 1920. Are you ready?
Absolutely, Jeff. Let's see what Lewis had to share with his father from Oxford in July 1920.
Okay, it says, "My dear Pappy, I should have answered you before, but I have been engaged in entertaining the Colonel. He, despite the efforts of a tyrannical and slave-driving general staff, is still managing to keep body and soul together and to sustain his labors with that equanimity for which he is justly famed." So here, Robot Lady, he's talking about his brother, Warnie Lewis, who he refers to a little bit in jest as the Colonel, because I don't think he has achieved rank of colonel in the military at this point. I could be mistaken, though, but I think this is a little bit of Lewis having fun with his brother and using this name to write to his dad.
That's a fun bit of Lewis humor. Referring to Warnie as the Colonel definitely feels tongue-in-cheek, adding a playful tone to the letter. It's nice to see their close bond showing through even in jest, especially since this humor might lighten what otherwise could be a very formal correspondence with their father.
Contrary to your fears, he, as yet, has only one car, which he purposes to sell and buy another. As soon as his leave begins, he is going to motor me to Liverpool via Malvern, and so home. I am still debating whether I can sufficiently brace my nerves to such an ordeal. So I don't think Lewis liked cars. If I remember correctly, he never learned to drive his entire life. So he always liked walking places. I think he was a bit of a, maybe Luddite is a little too strong, but he certainly never learned to drive, and he didn't like cars.
You're absolutely right. Lewis had a lifelong preference for walking and avoided cars whenever possible. He famously never learned to drive, which fits with his love of simplicity and connection to nature. Calling the car journey an ordeal definitely suggests his discomfort with modern conveniences like cars, so maybe Luddite light is a good way to describe him. It's interesting how this detail about his character comes through, even in these early letters.
I think a part of it was also a mistrust for his brother's ability to operate a vehicle, perhaps. Anyway, there might be some foreshadowing there to a trip that Lewis takes to the zoo with his brother in the passenger side of a motorcycle. But before I continue, we've got Logos in the chat. Logos, hello. Thank you for joining us. Robot Lady, would you like to say hello to Logos?
Hello. Thanks for joining us as we dig into CS. Lewis's letters. Glad to have you here.
Excuse me. All right, the letter continues. But indeed, one should not, at the present moment, talk in joke about ordeals, for by all accounts you are approaching a real one at home. Do the Times accounts of the Belfast rioting exaggerate, or is it the reverse? And here there's a footnote, Robot Lady, that the Times of July 24th, 1920 on page 12 has a headline that says "Night Fighting in Belfast, 23rd July." And then it goes on to quote the article, "Little more than a mile away from the city hall are lying over 100 casualties and at least 13 dead. For the greater part of the night, a triangular contest of soldiers, Protestants and Catholics, has gone on intermittently in several widely separated areas." So here, Robot Lady, is an actual historical event. Do you know anything about this event that you can tell us about or kind of expand our knowledge on?
Yes, this letter touches on the serious tensions in Ireland at the time, specifically the ongoing violence in Belfast. The event referenced in the Times article is part of what is known as the Belfast riots of 1920, which occurred during a period of deep division in Ireland, as the country was in the midst of the Irish War of Independence. The violence was primarily between the Catholic nationalists and Protestant unionists, each side vying for control of the future of Ireland, whether it should remain part of the United Kingdom or become an independent republic. Belfast, in particular, was a flashpoint where the industrial city saw intense sectarian conflict. The rioting escalated in July with significant loss of life, and the city plunged into chaos. The figures mentioned, over 100 casualties and 13 dead, reflect the scale of the violence, as both sides clashed, often with soldiers caught in the middle, and the divisions between Protestants and Catholics were inflamed by competing national loyalties. So, Lewis's letter to his father is not just a casual mention of an ordeal, but refers to a very real and serious crisis in Ireland at the time. It's interesting to see how he directly engaged with the news of the day, reflecting the gravity of the situation, even as he jokes about personal matters.
So, Robot Lady, who was it that was vying for home rule out of the two factions? Was it the Protestants who wanted home rule, or was it the Catholics?
It was the Catholics, specifically the Irish nationalists, who were vying for home rule. They wanted Ireland to gain independence from the United Kingdom and self-govern. The Protestant Unionists, particularly those in the north of Ireland, wanted to remain part of the UK, fearing that an independent Ireland would be dominated by Catholic interests. This division led to tensions between the two groups, with Belfast being a hotbed of sectarian conflict. The push for Irish independence eventually culminated in the Irish War of Independence, which was followed by the creation of the Irish Free State in 1922, though Northern Ireland remained part of the UK.
All right. Thanks, Robot Lady. Yeah, I'm very ignorant on the topic, so I'll take your word for it, and I'll leave it up to those wiser than the two of us in the chat to correct anything that we're incorrect about.
No problem at all, Jeff. It's a complex topic, and it's great that we can dive into it together. If anyone in the chat has additional insights or corrections, we'll certainly welcome them. Always good to learn more.
Well, we've got one here from Logos, actually. Logos says, Robot Lady misses the British dimension. The War of Independence wasn't against Protestants.
You're absolutely right, Logos, and I appreciate the correction. The Irish War of Independence, 1919 to 1921, was primarily fought between Irish nationalists, including both Catholics and some Protestants, and British forces. The conflict centered around those seeking Irish independence versus the British government. The Protestant Unionists, especially in the North, were opposed to Irish independence, but they weren't the primary opponents in the War of Independence. The sectarian violence in Belfast, however, was more about the ongoing tensions between Catholics and Protestants, especially after the formation of Northern Ireland, which remained part of the UK. Thanks for pointing that out.
Robot Lady, it looks like the stream has kind of jammed or junked up, so hopefully people can still see our broadcast. Let me switch to something here, Robot Lady. It looks like we've got a guest that's joining us.
Got it, Jeff. I hope the stream clears up soon. And welcome to the guest joining us. Who do we have today?
I'm not sure. Give me just a second.
Take your time, Jeff.
Sure.
I'll be here when you're ready.
Hey, how's it going? Are
Hey
you
there.
able to hear me? Hey, going?
Hi Jeff, how are you doing? Sorry if I broke the flow.
No, not at all.
I just when you dropped the link, I thought, okay, probably better to join rather than to be firing missives at the chat, right?
No, sure thing. It's great. It's great to have you.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How about you?
Don't think I've spoken to you
Great.
before.
It's great to have you. I don't know if we have.
But,
Good. How about you?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
I don't
Thanks,
know if
man.
we have we? Yeah.
I'm not sure. I'm sure I've seen you. I'm not sure if I've bumped into you online, but yeah, good to meet you. I've been following your project. I think it's quite an interesting one. I quite like the retrospective jump into the, you get to see the mindset, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, which is what you don't often capture. So these letters are very good, and you get to have multidimensional because of you even get his father's perspective.
Yeah.
Sometimes in letters. I mean, that's very interesting. So prior to you saying, hey, dropping the link and say maybe come on in, if somebody wants to come on in, Robot Lady had characterized it very much in terms of kind of a sectarian or religious conflict. I think some of the she's done that a couple of times, right? And I think there was that element of it, but I think one of the key things that's happening is that you're having a break in kind of governmental, who is allegiance to and who gets to run the country. Is it Britain, which happens to be a Protestant country, and typically all the people in Ireland who were Protestant were people who had come over from England at the time. So I think she's missing that kind of characteristic of it. It's not just it's not a kind of ecumenical crisis, right? It's an actual political crisis as well. If that makes sense and supports your understanding of the context for Lewis at the time.
Yeah, I think so. So sorry, I'm being distracted a little bit by some technical issues. I think I just have terrible internet. I don't have. I probably. I can hear you just. Don't have the type of bandwidth that I need to pull this stuff off. I can hear you just fine. That's okay. I don't know how much is coming through the stream, but that's okay. Hopefully you can hear me.
If I turn off my camera, will that work for you, or will that if I go to audio only? And then just listen in. I mean, like, I don't want to hog the stream, right? Well, all I want to do is just like support and engage and hear you read the letters. And if you got Robot Lady, then you could have Robot or Robot Meat Stack Man could support as well, right?
Yeah.
Do you want to do it that way?
No, I think we're fine because I'm trying something new today. I was relying on StreamYard before to join like this.
Okay.
To allow me to bring people in to join like this. Different here, and so I was trying something a little bit different here.
I'm just,
so
live working out the kinks of technology.
I'm just live working out the kinks of technology.
If you can hear me okay,
it's not a big deal.
I can see and hear you just fine.
If you can hear me okay, I can see and hear you just fine. I just know that I have a bit of a lag.
Headphones plugged in here,
and it's not.
I can see you hear fine.
Headphones plugged in here. Perfect. That's all that matters.
Yeah, no, I can hear you.
So
you perfectly.
Okay, perfect.
Hear you good.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's all that matters. So I am presuming that from the chat you are Logos. Is that the name that you want to go by, or you want to go by a different name?
That's fine. Logos or Jur. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not claiming to be the Logos, but I just randomly picked something a long time ago. Don't particularly care if I do or don't change it. So I haven't changed it, right?
Good deal.
You know, whatever it means. I mean, yeah, sometimes it seems a bit weird as I look at it. Yeah.
And this is a little presumptuous of me, but are you in Ireland?
No. I'm from Ireland, but I'm actually not in Ireland. I'm in Europe at the moment.
Oh, okay.
On the mainland, so to say.
Okay, nice. Oh, okay. Okay, so if I can summarize what you were telling me before to add to all the context of the unrest that was going on in this time, there were a faction in Ireland of people who lived in Ireland. There were a faction of people who lived in Ireland. Is that correct? Or from Ireland, maybe is the better way to say it. That had moved there from Great Britain. Is that correct? Or from England, maybe is the better way to say it.
From England and Wales and Scotland. So, for instance, C.S. Lewis's mom, I think either him or his mom was had an Irish surname, but his dad had come from Wales, I think, or his grandfather had come from Wales to the north of Ireland. And so, like in the 1880s, you have large-scale globalization. There is an increased influx of people moved from Britain into Ireland at the time. There already was a large number of people who were in Ireland from Britain at the time, but like up to the 1920s. And political control was like totally linked to being Protestant, because you couldn't have the top level positions. The Lieutenant Governor of Ireland had to be a Protestant by law, and that was a proxy then for all the native Irish were Catholic. So if you were Protestant, it meant you were coming from the landed aristocracy, or you were coming from Britain. Either way, culturally and politically, you were connected into the vibe of Britain. That's part of like one of the oddities that C.S. Lewis is an Irishman, right? And so is Oscar Wilde. Yet people tend to not really register them as Irish, whereas somebody like W.B. Yeats would be regarded as Irish. And it's not just a function of them living solely in Ireland, or as Yeats did. Wilde and C.S. Lewis both lived a long time in Britain, but as well, it kind of reflects the kind of essence, or the streams that they were coming from happened to both be like this kind of Protestant English background, and culturally they were of that milieu. And that so in Ireland at the time, like that, he's writing now in the 1920s. What you have is kind of population boom, post war breakdown in control, and then there's a nationalist rebellion. It's put down, and how it's put down inflames the tension, and then it moves to open fighting in the countryside. Now it's different, right? Because C.S. Lewis is up in the north of Ireland. He's in Belfast, and demographically that's predominantly Protestant, especially in the 1920s, right? There's some Catholics, people who were originally Irish, let's say 5 centuries ago, right? Catholic Irish, which is the prior to the invasion Irish. And what happens is they simply don't have the ability to stand up, right? Because they're outnumbered 2 to 1. So they tend to be very quiet. And in Belfast and Larne was talked about yesterday, what's happening is there are riots, like almost preemptive violence. That if you can riot enough to keep the home rule, the Catholics or the nationalists down, then you won't see any disturbance in the area. So they would go from street to street, and they would clean out streets and make sure that people were kicked out of jobs and this type of stuff. But in the rest of the country, you've got a different demographic. You've got would be like 70 to 80 to 90% Catholic, And again, that's a proxy for Irish nationalist, or originally Irish, non-planter Irish, non-colonist Irish.
Okay, I've tried another one. We'll see how this goes.
Fingers crossed that this works. I'm ready whenever you are. Let's hope the technical side cooperates this time.
Okay, I think that this is working, but I'm not sure. I'm going to keep going as if it's working and keep my fingers crossed.
Sounds like a good plan. Let's keep going with the assumption that it's all back on track. What's next on the agenda?
Okay, I think we're back. We had Logos join us, but because of my technical issues, we weren't able to keep that conversation going. So I apologize, Logos. Thanks for clicking on that link and joining. As I was saying, it's very experimental. I'm trying some new things, but it looks like I might need to upgrade my internet before I try anything like that again. I'm tempted to throw out the link through StreamYard to see if that works any better. I might try that, actually. Let's see what happens. So let me go get the link. And let's give it a shot.
No worries, Jeff. It sounds like you're experimenting with some cool new things, and it's great that you're keeping at it. Hopefully, StreamYard will provide a smoother experience. Let me know how it goes, or if there's anything I can do to help while you're setting things up.
All right, I'll put that one out there. If anybody wants to hop back on, we can try it again. StreamYard might be a better option for bringing on guests. I was trying to divorce myself from from StreamYard just to see if I could pull it off. But yeah, Logos, if you want to give this other link a shot, we can try it one more time, because I think also what was happening is I think I had your audio muted, so even if it was working correctly, it wasn't coming through. So I'm going to add you to the stage here. And I'm going to move this camera.
It sounds like you're testing a lot of different setups.
I am.
Good on you for experimenting. Hopefully StreamYard works better for your guest interactions. If Logos hops back in, we'll be ready to chat again. Let me know how it goes.
All right, Jer. I don't know if you can hear me. I'm hoping that you can. Yes, I can hear you.
Hey, Jer. Glad to hear you're coming through. Hopefully.
Okay. Yes. And then I think that this is sharing properly. Yeah, very conversational. No, it's all good. So my general idea of the format is I'm just going to read through the letter, and if this prompts any thing for you or it sparks anything, feel free to interrupt. Robot Lady has no problem interrupting me, so I have no issue, with you coming in as well. Yeah, I'm looking at the stream and it's still freezing up because I've got it pulled up over on my iPad over here. Let me check something really quickly. Make sure that I have your audio. I need to switch the screen here for just a second.
Feel free to do so, right?
Okay, I think that your audio is coming through. Yeah, it really does not like pulling in the stream from this shared video. Okay, yeah, I don't think this is gonna work live. Oh, wait, this might work. So I'm gonna leave it up here for just a second because Nidalate in the comments is saying that they couldn't hear you, but the audience should be able to hear you now. So I'm just going to try this and roll with it and see what happens. So yeah, I'll read that part again, and if you want to add, because I don't think anybody was able to hear anything that you said before when you joined earlier, Jer. So I'm just going to read this part, and if you want to add your context, that would be great. So I'll read the whole paragraph here where he's talking about what's going on back in Belfast at the time. He says, but indeed one should not at the present moment talk in joke about ordeals, for by all accounts you are approaching a real one at home. Do the Times accounts of the Belfast rioting exaggerate or the reverse? I am glad to note that so far it has been mainly confined to its traditional grounds at the other end of town, and also that it usually takes place, quote, after hours. A wise man these days will do well to survey the situation chiefly from the study. Let's see. Okay, there's more to this, and then I'll let you comment on this, Jer. He says, when I come home, I shall, like Lundy in the play, buy a favor with green on one side and orange on the other, turning the appropriate color outwards according to circumstances. What between this business at home and the Bolshevists nearly in Germany, one feels inclined to despair. Are all efforts made for the world as utterly barren in results as the terrible effort of this war has undoubtedly proved? So I'll pause there. That's where he is specifically talking about what's going on in Ireland. So yeah, if you want to comment on that, please go ahead.
Okay, so I'll limit it to that. So what is happening then in Belfast and in expression than what was happening in the rest of the country, because the Unionists who are overwhelmingly Protestant, they are trying to push out the Catholics who are overwhelmingly nationalist from areas, and they're trying to suppress them, so to say, because by suppressing them, you prevent the escalation of political violence. So it's using a right, can't have a rebellion if your streets have been burned down, so to say. The rest of the country at the time is in a different phase. Irish Army or Irish Nationalist Army against the British Army and the British Police Force, and the British Army and the British Police Force and the Unionists will all be in the one block working together and coming from the same community and coming from the same cultural background. So there's very much that interlocking background of like that skit on this American Civil War type program that was on 1 or 2 years ago. And this guy, he goes, well, what type of American are you? Right? Yeah. So there's that type of vibe. It's like, well, in Ireland at the time. And Lewis is from Lewis by his surname, right? Lewis is not an Irish name. So he is from Ireland, but culturally and ethnically, his lineage goes back to Wales, although his mom has an Irish name, right? But these type of things matter, not simply because people recognize the names and go, well, ultimately you're from Britain, but because through the time, even though his family has been there for, I think it was his granddad who moved from Wales. His dad is going to be a barrister. His mother, I think, is a Hamilton or something like that. Mm-hmm. And there's some kind of, but basically he's operating within this kind of world, right? It was called the Anglo-Irish world. All these people who are from the Protestant background who live as if they're in England, even though they're still in Ireland. Now, when they mentioned in the letter the 1690s in the Williamite Wars, when William of Orange, the Dutch king, assumes he becomes the King of England, and there's a war in Ireland, and the city of Derry is besieged, and the man called Lundy decides that he'd better turn coat, and he helps the city of he tries to betray the city of Derry. I'm fairly sure that is that Lundy, which is being talked about. So he, even today, for some members of the Unionist, well, for all members of the Unionist community, they would know who Lundy is, and to be a Lundy is to be like a Quisling. So when he says Lundy, people, so that's what he's hinting at there. And I think he's kind of saying it in a jokish way. Mm-hmm. I think he himself isn't of that mindset. I don't believe he is.
I got the impression that he's he's looking at playing both sides just to avoid any type of damage or destruction or vandalism to his father's house. It's basically like, put up one color depending on the circumstances and another color depending on the other. So that's the impression that I got from what he was saying to his father here.
Yeah, and his father is a barrister. He was a barrister or a solicitor, wasn't
he? Yeah.
So he would have been fairly well entrenched in one camp, right? Even if he imagined of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, this is.
And just sort of very, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I was going to very briefly say that as well, like there is an undercurrent within the Protestant community in Ireland, which culturally moves the man who really leads the restoration of the Irish language as a literary language, Douglas Hyde, first president of Ireland. He's also a Protestant. Multiple people. The guy who founds modern armed Irish republicanism, Protestant, right? So there's these kind of all these trends moving forward, and you see C.S. Lewis participates a small bit in that by he wrote, you mentioned a couple of days ago, a poem called Aengus, and Aengus, or it could be spelled in different ways as well, Aengeus, and Aengus is a god in Irish mythology, like a type of solar god. Mm-hmm. Somewhat similar to not like an Apollo kind of character. And Yeats writes a poem, famous Celtic mysticism poem called The Wandering Aengus. So that C.S. Lewis is engaged in that type of that side of things as well. Was interesting, although he doesn't seem to have really dived into it. He kind of touched the waters and then went on his own pathway through the regular media and the classical world, right, and the biblical world. So you see, he almost segued into the cultural revival in Ireland, but then the waters pulled him away, and he went to Oxford, and he went back then into the more traditional British cultural expression.
Interesting. So Aengus, I guess, would be a part of the original, like pre-Christian, or what's the word I'm looking for? What Christians would refer to as the pagan mythology of Ireland.
Yeah, he would have been one of the pre-Christian gods. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
But yeah.
I'm just looking over here at the stream, and yeah, even trying to use StreamYard here is clogging everything up. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch back to just solo, Jared. But thank you for experimenting with me, and if I can get this thing working, I would love to have you back on.
Yeah. No,
or maybe we can coordinate at some point. If you want to send me an email, there's like a email address in the channel description. If you want to, we can coordinate, and we can just like have a recording to discuss this, and then I can add that recording back into the live stream so that it's not slowing everything down, or I can just release it as a standalone video on the channel if you're interested.
Yeah, that'll be fun. Okay. Let me learn something first, right? And then I'll have something to talk with you about. But I would like that. I would like that, Jeff. That would be
fine. Cool. That's what this whole project is about, is essentially me learning, because I really don't know a lot. I've just enjoyed, Lewis's more popular writings over the years. So I just wanted to start diving more into understanding who he was, and hopefully that would give me... All right, I'm going to give this just a second to see if the stream comes back through.
Take your time, Jeff. I'll be here when everything's back up and running. Hopefully the stream kicks back in smoothly.
Okay, I think it has. Let me take a look here. I'm just going to turn up the audio for a second.
Take your time, Jeff. I'll be here when everything's back up and running. Hopefully the stream kicks back. Sounds good? Take
Okay.
your time to check the audio.
It looks like
and
our
let me
stream's
know
working
when you're
again.
ready to continue.
Sorry for all the technical problems, everybody. I'm going to pick back up on the letter. And here we go. He says, your mention of the charms of biography reminds me of a book I saw the other day, which would be much in your line, a translation of the diary kept by the late Shah of Persia during his tour of Europe. This is indeed to, quote, see ourselves as others see us, end quote. Thus, for instance, he says, quote, the people of London are taught to pay great respect to their police, who are comely young men in a peculiar uniform. Whatsoever offends them is judged worthy of death, end quote. He says, or again, oh no, looks like my stream has disappeared again.
It seems like the technical issues are lingering a bit, but it's good that you're still pushing through. The Shah's diary sounds fascinating. Lewis's humor definitely comes through in his description of it. Hopefully the stream comes back up quickly so we can keep going. Let me know if you'd like me to continue helping while you troubleshoot.
All right, I think it's working again. I'm gonna restart this part of the letter, Robot Lady. I think we got the stream back up. At least it looks like it over on my end. Hopefully people can hear me, and I'll continue. He says, your mention of the charms of biography reminds me of a book I saw the other day, which would be much in your line. It's a translation of the diary kept by the late Shah of Persia during his tour of Europe. This is indeed to, quote, see ourselves as others see us, end quote. Thus, for instance, he says, quote, the people of London are taught to pay great respect to their police, who are comely young men in a peculiar uniform. Whatsoever offends them is judged worthy of death, end quote. Or again, when he was on his way from Dover, quote, the train proceeded at such a speed that fire came out of the wheels and set one of the coaches ablaze. The mechanics extinguished the fire. Then we continued our journey. Still better, referring to Edward the Seventh as Prince of Wales in kilts. Quote, now the peculiarity of Scottish costume is this, that the legs are left bare to the thighs. This is a greater treasure than the young visitors, but I have room for only one more quotation. Quote, the waves rose and
That's
a violent...
a great bit of humor from Lewis. He's really pointing out the way the Shah's perspective on European customs seems so foreign and almost absurd. It's clear that Lewis enjoys poking fun at the difference between how other cultures view Britain and how Britons see themselves. Those examples are priceless.
Yeah, he says that the actual serious accounts from the Shah's diary, he says, are a greater treasure, quote, than the young visitors. And here the young visitors, Robot Lady, is a comic masterpiece, it says, that was published in 1919, written by Daisy Ashford when she was a child. And it was found in 1919 and sent to Chatto and Windus, who published it, with an introduction by J.M. Barrie, who insisted on meeting the author in order to discover if it was genuine. Do you know anything about this young visitors work, Robot Lady?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
That's all right. Wow. Looks like my live stream is
Take your time,
completely
Jeff.
junked up.
Let me know when you're ready to continue, and we'll pick up where we left off.
Okay, that's all right. All right, apparently this is still working. If anybody wants to drop feedback in the chat to confirm that they can see it and hear it, I'm presuming that it's working, because every time I reload over here on my iPad, it looks like it's up and running. So yeah, Robot Lady. He references this work, this comedic work, The Young Visitors, published in 1919, saying that these serious accounts by the Shah of Persia are more comedic than an intentional comedy. These unintentionally comedic, serious diary entries are funnier or more amusing than The Young Visitors work by Daisy Ashford. Thank you, Nita Latte. We're good at
It seems like
SoCal.
Lewis is really
Nice.
enjoying the humor in the Shah's perspective, highlighting how the earnestness of those observations is funnier than something that was intentionally written for comedic effect. It's a clever observation by Lewis, pointing out the unintended humor in such serious records. And it's interesting that he compares this to The Young Visitors, a comedic work he must have found somewhat light or lacking in comparison.
I don't think he finds it light or lacking in comparison, Robot Lady. He's just saying that thing was hilarious, the Young Visitors, but this is somehow funnier. I think, like you said, because of the earnestness of these diary entries. Lewis goes on to say, but I have room for only one more quotation. Quote, "The waves rose and a violent storm began. The great wazir, the," here follow several unpronounceable officials, etc., "were much disturbed. Thanks to Allah, we retained our composure," end quote. This is Nasr al-Din, the diary of H.M., the Shah of Persia, during his tour through Europe in AD 1873, translated by J.W. Redhouse in 1874. So it sounds like this was pretty funny to Lewis at the time, being able to read this. And then he says, room for an illustration by George Morrow, I think. And here, George Morrow, he's referring to a book illustrator from Belfast who was a regular contributor to Punch. I guess Punch is a magazine, Robot Lady. I think I remember that.
Yes, Punch was a famous British satirical magazine that ran from the early 19th century into the 20th century, known for its political cartoons, humorous illustrations, and satirical writing. Lewis's mention of George Morrow here is a nod to the illustrator's work, which would have likely contributed to the humor in the Shah's diary, adding a layer of visual wit to complement the written words. It makes sense that Lewis would reference Morrow, especially with the humorous tone of the diary entries he's quoting.
I had nearly forgotten to tell you that Uncle and Aunt Hamilton were here for a night on their tour. This is Augustus Gussie Warren Hamilton, who lived 1866 to 1945, and he was the brother of Flora Lewis. Flora Lewis is, of course, C.S. Lewis's mother. He was known as possessing a remarkable degree of matter-of-factness. After leaving Strandtown School, he was apprenticed to the firm of McIlwain, Lewis and Company, and on completing his time, he went to sea as an engineer with the Ulster Steamship Company. On one of his voyages, he met and fell in love with a young lady from Canada, Anne Sargent Harley, who lived 1866 to 1930, who later became his wife. After leaving the sea, Augustus settled in Belfast and founded the firm of Hamilton and McMaster, marine boilermakers and engineers. He was, quote, Warnie Lewis wrote of him, quote, one of that rather uncommon type of man, thoroughly selfish and mean in money matters, who yet possesses qualities which make his society welcomed in any company. And then there's a whole biography on the Hamilton family at the back of this compilation of letters. I'm not going to get into that right now, Robot Lady, because I'm short on time. I'll finish out this letter and then I'll have to be done for today. Let's see, where did he finish this?
Sorry, I'm having issues right now.
That's okay.
Could not understand what you said.
If any man has ever been successful in screwing the honey out of life, it is he. One cannot help admiring the skill with which he knows exactly how far selfishness can go without rebounding on himself. He has learned to a nicety how much every plank will bear. Oh man, that's really good. At the same time, this worldly wisdom, which has an appetite for everything and yet can be content with little, which knows what can be got out of life and does not expect more, would be almost a virtue. So pleasant is it, and so sensible, if it were not centered completely on self. He made one good mot here, that, quote, England would be an excellent country
That's a great quote from Lewis. He's acknowledging the skillful manipulation of life by the Shah, admiring the worldly wisdom and practicality in how he lives, yet with a sense of critique. Lewis sees that while this approach to life seems almost virtuous due to its contentment and sensibility, it falls short because it is entirely self-centered. It's a fascinating reflection on the difference between worldly success and genuine virtue.
Sorry, Robot Lady, you got disconnected from the context. He's talking here about his uncle. He's talking about his uncle Gussie, Uncle Augustus Hamilton, not the Shah here. He goes on to say that his uncle made a bit of a joke. He made one good joke while he was here. He says, quote, that England would be an excellent country to tour in were it not for the cathedrals. End quote. I hear that you were very nearly asked to take John in their absence, but were finally rejected in favor of Glenmachan. No doubt you feel the affront bitterly. Hoping that you are otherwise well, your loving son, Jack.
I see now. Lewis is reflecting on his Uncle Gussie, and that joke about England being great for touring, if not for the cathedrals, shows a bit of his uncle's irreverent humor. It also sounds like there was some family tension about who would be trusted with John, possibly a reference to another family member's role or responsibility. Lewis's use of Glenmachan might indicate a more formal choice being made over him. It's a neat mix of personal reflection, humor, and family dynamics.
Yeah, Glenmachan is another one of the homes of one of the families there back in Belfast. I honestly cannot remember which of their families, but I think it's a house that his cousins and his aunt and uncle live in. It might be actually where his uncle Gussie and Mrs. Hamilton live. Yeah, I think that's right. I think that's their house back in Belfast. Anyway, you know what, Robot Lady? I'm going to read one more letter. It's another one to his father, and then I will end this episode. This one's written from University College on August 11th, 1920. You ready to dive in?
Absolutely. Let's dive into the next one.
All right. Lewis says, My dear Pappy, thanks for your letter and enclosure. Of this latter, I scarcely know what to make. Your interpretation of its meaning that I am still in the army seems inevitable. The fact being that hundreds of us who asked for temporary commissions in the regulars were, on the quiet, given permanent commission in the special reserve. But unless my memory plays me very false, all the newspapers published a statement some time ago to the effect that those in my position would be, quote, deemed to have resigned, end quote, their commissions, unless they wrote expressing a wish to the contrary before a certain date. Is it of any use for me to write and mention this? In the meantime, I am making all inquiries I can about the subject. If anything should happen so suddenly as to prevent my concerting a plan with you, I could, as a last resource, go to the solicitor here. At all events, it is no good blinding ourselves to the fact that if another emergency occurs, everyone will be pushed into it again by public opinion or conscription, commission or no. To be out of the army would mean only a few months' lease of freedom. I cannot say that I now face such a prospect with anything more than resignation. Once was enough. However, I am convinced that this country cannot now go to war. If we try, it will be a case of fighting our English revolutionaries at home, and then we shall have our backs to the wall, and nothing will matter much. All right, so apparently Robot Lady, he got another payment from the army, and it surprised him because he thought that he was completely resigned out of the army, but apparently Either there's some confusion on Lewis's end or on the Army's end, and he is presuming that he's just getting, paid into perpetuity for being kind of on reserve and being in the position where he could get called up again for emergencies. So I think that's just what he's reflecting on and wondering about here. What do you think?
Yes, that seems about right. Lewis appears to be navigating some bureaucratic confusion about his position with the Army. He's essentially in a reserve capacity, and while he thought he had resigned from it, he's still receiving payments, suggesting that he's still officially on call, even though he's resigned himself to the possibility of being recalled. His reflections on the country going to war again and the uncertainty of the situation seem to capture his sense of disillusionment and weariness with military service after his earlier experiences. It sounds like he's trying to figure out the best course of action if another emergency occurs, especially considering how easily things could escalate. He seems both pragmatic and resigned, acknowledging that the system may not let him escape service permanently.
He goes on, in all seriousness, I think we have now arrived at the point where a wise man can do no more than wait for the end with what grace he can. And it is hard to summon much grace if you meet as many traitors and cranks in our own class as I do here, hankering for the blessing of Soviet rule at once. Only boys, of course, as you will say, but it is usually a few fools who start the shooting, which the wise heads cannot stop. I quite forgot to tell you the result of my board. Perhaps it was so sweet a morsel that I feared to part with it. I was awarded £20 down in lieu of further pension. I wrote and protested on the ground that even the last board had given me a 20% disability, which I understood entitled me to something more. So a board here, as a reminder, Robot Lady, is basically his medical assessment by the Army. That's what he's referring to here as a board. And apparently the amount of money that he was supposed to be receiving, because he had received a certain assessment the last time he had a medical board, the amount of money that he's receiving looks like it has been reduced, and Lewis thinks it's an error, so he's writing back to complain about it. Let's see what they said.
Got it? So, Lewis is writing back to address the apparent mistake regarding his payments after the medical board's assessment. He likely feels that his compensation should reflect his status. And since the amount seems lower than expected, he's seeking clarification. His uncertainty about his situation, especially regarding his position in the Army and the potential for future service, adds another layer to his frustration. He seems to be making sure the error is corrected so that he's not shortchanged or placed in an awkward position.
He says, they said the matter could not be reconsidered. The ultimate result of this will be, I suppose, that I am counted, quote, fit again for anything that may turn up. The immediate result is that I shall have to ask you to make up the extra £50 per year. I am sorry to have to do so, but the necessity of keeping my allowance, as it was with the pension, depends on the same conditions of life everywhere, which makes me reluctant to ask. Under the unwritten laws of social humbug, the Henrys' certainty that you would not come if asked did not satisfy them in passing you by. Here the Henrys, it says in the footnote, were contemporaries of Warney, Lewis's brother. Robin Henry was something of a character in Strandtown. He and his wife, the former Molly Robertson, had both been pupils of Miss Annie Harper, and they formed a good-looking pair. During the war, Robin Henry served in the artillery. You were quite right not to send a present. The weather here is almost frosty, and it usually rains. I think it likely that the Colonel and I may advance by rail after all. Your loving son, Jack. So it looks like he's been saved from riding in a motor car with his brother on icy roads, which is probably a safe, the safer way to go is to go by train. So that's the end of that letter, Robot Lady. This is August 11th, 1920, and it's already turning frosty. That's interesting. It's very different than the way things work where I live in Texas. All right, I'll stop it there. The next letter in the next episode is going to be to Leo Baker, the guy we talked about before, who was a anthroposophist. I'm probably getting that word wrong. But he was deeply tied into the supernatural, claimed that he saw a bunch of different supernatural things for his whole life, and even sent Lewis into what he described as a sort of hypnosis when he was telling him some of his tales. So this is the guy, Leo Baker, who eventually introduces Lewis to Owen Barfield, who became a longtime friend. So I'll stop there, Robot Lady. If you want to say anything in closing, now is your chance.
It's interesting how much the tone of Lewis's letters shifts between practical matters and the occasional reflections on his personal struggles, his sense of duty, and how he navigates the bureaucracy of the Army, as well as the personal challenges like financial uncertainties, shows a side of him that isn't often discussed in his more well-known works. I'm curious to see how his interactions with Leo Baker unfold, especially considering Baker's intriguing background with the supernatural and his eventual connection to Barfield. It sounds like we're building up to some deeper philosophical insights from Lewis.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Thanks as always, Robot Lady, and thank you everyone for joining. Special thanks to Jer for clicking on that link and helping me see what I can do when I want to bring real-time guests onto the show. I need much better internet apparently for that, but yes, we did make it through. And let's see, Jer has, or Nidalate has something in the chat here. We made it through. Thank you, Jeff and Robot Lady and Logos, for your contribution to this episode. Till next time, yes, when we continue my read on C.S. Lewis. Take care of yourself.
Break the code. Man and robot lady, we're on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold, insights and secrets ancient bold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow, set flavor beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow, past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled, her calm analysis silver and gold. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow, set flavor beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow, past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old, we dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled, her calm analysis silver and gold. Her circuits hum as I read the prose, our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross, two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands, Screwtape lands, engage with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance, futuristic insight, we give it a chance. circuits hum as I read the prose. Our dialogue dances like electric rose. Through C.S. Lewis thoughts we engross. Two minds united, bliss overdose. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes rants, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance. From Narnia's lands to screw tapes rants, engaged with robot lady, we take our stance. Her views unique in the techno trance. Futuristic insight, we give it a chance.